Hey guys, this is EJ Holland with the Wolverine.com, and we're here for another Michigan recruiting report where we're going to be breaking down the top five recruiters on Michigan's staff this cycle. So, which assistant coaches have done the best job on the recruiting trail this cycle? Some of it's subjective, some of it, was based on rankings and things of that nature. But let's go ahead and start off with number five on the list, and that is Chris Partridge, Michigan's linebackers coach, came in after the cycle had already kind of gotten underway. And he hasn't landed, the big fish at linebacker just yet. But when you look at the guys committed to Michigan, he found some really solid prospects. You have two guys that are some of the biggest risers in the rankings nationally. One is Jaden Smith. He's a guy that's now ranked in the top 200. He's a flex guy that can play multiple positions, but Michigan really likes him as a potential will. And then you have Cole Sullivan, who's another top 200 guy on three's latest rankings, who I think might end up being the best defensive commit in this class. So that's a solid duo. And he came in and the Jeremiah Beasley recruitment was already in full swing, but I think Partridge helped seal the deal there. Beasley had some great things to say about Partridge before he committed. I think you could see more success for Partridge next cycle. He's a guy that's very plugged in the state of New Jersey. You're seeing some more movement there in 2025. But for this cycle, I think, number five is probably a good spot for him. Number four on the list is Michigan cornerbacks coach and co-defensive coordinator Steve Clinkscale. Now, you might be saying, why is Steve Klingscale so high on this list, considering the fact that Michigan didn't land their top cornerback targets this cycle? They had to circle back to Jeremiah Lowe and Josiah Edmond. Look, I think Josiah Edmond is going to be one of the true steals of this class. I think he's going to really surge in the rankings. I have him ranked as a five-star type, a four-star type of guy. Sorry, excuse me. So yeah, I think Josiah Edmond was a really quality land. But on top of that, Steve Klingskill is one of the area recruiters in the state of Michigan. So he led the way in the recruitment of Jacob Oden, who is a top 200 prospect and Michigan's lone committed at the safety position. He is also the area recruiter in Nashville, and he recruited Mason Curtis, who's a top 300 prospect and an intriguing defensive athlete. He led the way with Jeremiah Beasley, who we just talked about, top 300 linebacker. So he played a role in a lot of these recruitments. Steve Klingscale is responsible for helping Michigan restart that Ohio movement. So he was involved with Jordan Marshall. He was involved with Luke Hamilton. He was involved with Ben Roebuck. So yeah, I mean, he just had a hand in a lot of these recruitments. And even though he, again, didn't land Bryce West or Aaron Scott or some of the other guys that were high on the corner board, I mean, you have Steve Klingscale's name over, a lot of these recruits. So I still think you have to give him a ton of credit. So Steve Klingscale's number four. Let's go to number three. And that is my man, Mike Hart, man, Michigan's running backs coach. Look, Mike Hart caught a lot of flack from me early on in his tenure at Michigan. I thought he really struggled on the recruiting trail. He was a guy that just wasn't keeping in contact with a lot of targets. There were some contact issues in general. Wasn't on the road a ton and just kind of lackluster lands. But this cycle, I felt like he really turned it around. I mean, Mike Hart put in a ton of extra effort in the winter. This guy was all over the place on the recruiting trail. From Texas to the DMV to all over the country, doing some area recruiting and position recruiting. And he pulled in the best guy in the class, Jordan Marshall. So just talked about Jordan Marshall, top 100 running back out of Cincinnati Moeller. I mean, Jordan Marshall is clearly the best commit in Michigan's 2024 recruiting class. He's a guy that Ohio State wanted. He's a guy that can come in and start as a true freshman if Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum are gone. So that was just a terrific land from Mike Hart and just doing some area recruiting. He was involved with Brady Prescorn, and he landed a really talented second back too in Micah Kapana out of Las Vegas. Hart went all the way to Vegas to see Kapana, made him a priority, and stole him from out west. So I think you have to give Mike Hart a lot of praise. He is, if there was an award for most improved recruiter on staff, he would definitely win that. So definitely wanted to put Mike Hart high on the list. Number two is Michigan tight ends coach Grant Newsome. Now I'm giving Newsome a lot of love here because he just got promoted to a full-time assistant not too long ago, and the dude has been grinding on the recruiting trail. When we're talking about traveling across the country, this guy, like, one day he was in the spring. One day, I'm not even joking. One day he was in New Jersey, and the next day he was in Seattle. I mean, he was always grinding on the trail, and it's paid off. So he landed two on 300 tight ends, one being top 100 prospect Brady Prieskorn out of Rochester Adams. So that was, even though he's an in-state kid, I thought Newsome did a terrific job in helping the Wolverines close there. And then he went all the way to the Pacific Northwest, where he spent a ton of resources and came away with a big land in Hogan Hansen, who, if you saw Zach Libby's clips here on our YouTube channel, looks like he could be underrated and could be in the same mold as Colston Loveland. And on top of that, he's kind of helped Michigan have more success in New Jersey, Pennsylvania. He's a guy that's really connected in those areas. In fact, he served as the area recruiter for Owen Wafel, who flipped from Notre Dame and is, like I've said before, one of the most underrated guys in the class along the defensive line. So Grant Newsome definitely deserves his props. And then number one, I went with Sharon Moore, and just consistency, man. Michigan's offensive coordinator and offensive line coach. Look, it's really tough to be an offensive coordinator, an offensive line coach, and an elite recruiter. But Sharon Moore is that guy, man. He's a really special assistant coach. He, obviously put together a really high quality offensive line class. You have two top 200 prospects in Andrew Sprague and Blake Frazier. You have a 4-star in Luke Hamilton. You have Ben Roebuck and Jake Guanera, who are two quality 3-stars. He's the area recruiter in Chicagoland, and helped bring in Amarion Stewart as the offensive coordinator. He was heavily involved with Michigan quarterback commit Jaden Davis. So I think Sharon Moore's done a fantastic job. Yes, there were some big misses along the offensive line this cycle, but overall, I really like Sharon Moore's body of work, especially considering, what he's actually doing as an on-field coach. So that's my time, guys. Remember to subscribe to the Wolverine.com for $1 for 1 month. Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel for free.